Hey folks, Andy Picker here. Welcome, thanks for joining me. Okay, this video was made for one particular reason. My mate Rob has got a copy of Cubase and is having a little bit of difficulty getting his head around plumbing it into his audio interface to get signal into and out of the software. So I thought I'll just do a quick run through on screen and put it out as a video so that he can kind of go through it step by step, get his head around what he needs to do. And if I just stick it out on my channel, anyone else who's got the same problem can use it as well. I know when I first started using Cubase, I got really confused about exactly what I was doing and what I needed to do and where I needed to do it to actually get something out of it. So hopefully this will help. Now, I would normally do a screen video using a set of drivers that enable me to capture sound directly from the DAW itself, from what the computer's doing. But I want to do this using my normal driver setup so it looks more like it would do for most people. So what I'm going to do is just let the audio get captured by the microphone that I'm speaking into. So apologies if the audio isn't kind of first rate on doing this, but I don't want to confuse things by using a bizarre set of drivers that I need to do for the screen capture. So okay, what you can see on the screen there is the basic sort of layout that you get when you first open Cubase. So I've just opened this as absolutely new with nothing in it at all. So what we need is we need to set up some routing. And first of all, if we go to the top of the screen and click on devices and go to device setup, this is where we get to make sure that what we're looking at is the correct driver for the audio interface that we're using. So I'm using an RME Fireface. So mine comes up as being an ASIO Fireface in that little window. And if you click on the down arrow, you will see a list of anything else that you've got installed. If you've got a separate sound card installed, it will show you some options for that, which is what I've got with the generic low latency and the ASIO DirectX. But I'm using the ASIO Fireface, so I will leave that click there, keep it as it is. Click, in fact, just to show you where you have the VST audio system there, this is where we are at the moment. And if you click on the name of your driver below that, it will show you this, which is what are the various connections that are available on the hardware unit, and telling you whether you've got anything actually happening with them at the moment or not. Thing that's worth checking is where you've got these little crosses that says that they are visible or invisible. One of the things you can do in Cubase is simplify things. So if you've got an interface that's got lots and lots of I/O on it and you don't want to see all of it, you can simply hide the ports. I'm not going to do that. I want to see everything that I've got. So okay, everything there is flagged as inactive, or most of it is flagged as inactive, because I don't actually have any I/O set up for that, and I'll show you what that means in just a moment. So if I just do an OK there to get out of that screen, and then I'm going to go back up to devices, open that again, and I'm going to go to VST connections. Now, on the PC version of Cubase, you can get to this with an F4 click, and it's always worth learning those keystrokes. So if I pop out of there and then just press F4, and I've got a bunch of tabs here. I've got inputs, outputs. We're not going to worry about group FX, external FX, or external instruments for the moment, and we've got the studio. Now, I use the studio outputs, but just to keep this really simple, if we click on inputs, and you see you've got a baseline stereo input pair there, and it's giving you a left and right. And if you click on the yellow box, which is the device port, you get to choose what you actually want as your inputs from the actual physical device you've got. Now, I have a preset set up for mine because there are quite a few bits that I generally have set up, but I'll show you what we've got here just to make sure that it's all kind of quite clear. So I like to have my inputs set up as mono rather than pairs. So all of these things, you see you've got the names of the various input options there. And if you click the little plus or minus sign next to it, you either expand or reduce down what you're seeing. So if I expand all of those out by clicking on the all at the top, you can see that I've actually got each type of connection sitting under there. So my FF1 is my Fireface 1, which is a mic line input, and I've just giving these things useful names to remind me of what they are. So my Fireface 2 is a mic line input, instrument line on 3, instrument or line on 4, and then 5 and 6 I've got an external preamp plugged into those. If I wanted to add a new bus to it, I would simply click that and say I can have a mono or a stereo configuration and give it a name, and I'm going to call this demo. Okay, so you can see demo sitting at the bottom there, and it's a mono input. In the yellow box, I get to choose what I'm actually having as my input. And for the sake of doing this, I'm going to reassign analog 1 to it just by selecting it from that list. So I've now got an input called demo, which is a mono input, and it's assigned to analog 1. So that is how I get stuff into Cubase. I now need to look at how I get stuff out. Now, I usually use a studio setup, which I find works very well for me, but keeping it really simple for the moment, if we look at outputs, again, the basic set that we get is called stereo out with the left right, and if we click on the little blue box in this case, see that I've got nothing connected there, and the reason I've got nothing connected is because I'm using studio out. But if I go to here and say, right, let's just take this absolutely from scratch, so I've got a stereo output pair with nothing connected, and I want to take this, and I'm going to say that my left output is going to be my analog 1, and my right output is going to be my analog 2, and the Neumann's bit is there simply because I've got my Neumann monitors connected up to those. Now, in doing that, I've just stolen those outputs from my studio tab. I'll have to put those back later, but for what we're doing here, let's just keep it simple. And just to show again how the add bus works here, if I click add bus, and let's say that I wanted to add a stereo output for headphones, and then I can assign those, and my headphones are actually on my stereo 7 and 8, I think. Is that right? Yeah, 7 and 8 as my headphones. And you see they pick up the name of the bus that they're connected to. So analog 1 and 2 are now stereo out left, stereo out right. If I just change that and said I was going to call them, there's no reason to do this, I'm just doing it to sort of illustrate the point. But if I change that to main out and then click on there, that becomes my main out left and my main out right. And I suggest that it's worth taking 2 minutes to just set these up with names that you're going to look at and think, yep, I know what that is. That when you come back to this in, a few days' time, you're not going to be sitting there scratching your head thinking, I don't remember any of this. So that is, if you remember, in VST connections outputs, and you just click on the little cross to close that down as is standard in Windows. So again, just to make sure you know where to find that, devices, VST connections, and close it from there. Or you can F4 to get the same window open and closed. So we've set our inputs and outputs, but we've actually not got anything on screen that we can do anything at all with to check this. So first thing that I'm going to do, the simplest way to check this may be, in actual fact, open the transport, so transport panel or F2, so clicking F2 goes away, comes back, and if you set it playing and you've got, you hear that? That is because I've got the metronome set to go, and that's the button just there, the one that looks like a very stylized version of an old-fashioned metronome with a swinging arm on it. So that tells me that I am getting some sort of output, but let's get something a little more meaningful on the go. I'll park that down at the bottom because it's quite useful. So the area right on the left is the inspector. If you're brand new to Cubase, that's where you see the details of your tracks. This is where you get the list of your tracks, and this is where you get the stuff you're actually working on. So I am going to right click here. I could go up and click, in fact, let's do it on screen. I can right click, but I can also click add track, and I can say add an audio track, for instance. So my audio track, I'm going to have a mono track, and I'm going to call it audio test 1. I will click add track there, and the reason that I'm adding an audio track is that we can see with the track highlighted, which makes it this sort of light grey colour in my setup. In the inspector, we get audio test one, audio test one. We've got the section of track controls here, and then we've got the volume level, the panning, and the track delay, which is used for aligning tracks if you're, say, getting phases on different tracks set up. But if you pop down here, we've got no track preset set up. That's fine for the moment. And I've got my input, so a little arrow going into a box is input, and a little arrow going out of a box is output. So there I've got my Fireface mic line input, which I had set up. But remember, we just set up a demo input, an input called demo. So I'm just going to F4 to bring up my VST connections again. And on the inputs, the last one we did, we set up a mono input, which was called demo mono on analog 1. And there we've got the option of demo as our input. The other thing that we set up is on the output, we called the main output main out. So if we go down to here, the little square box with the arrow pointing out of it, main out, which is what we want. But we also set up that headphones. First, remember, headphones. So we could route to our headphone output if that was what we wanted to do. We're going to leave it going out to main out to the speakers at the moment. Right now, we need a little bit of noise that we can test on doing this. So the first thing first is if we plug a microphone into socket 1, then we should be able to get some input. So I'll tell you what, bear with me just a second, and I'm going to grab a dynamic mic. In fact, I've got a dynamic mic on a stand right here. Where's the other end of the lead? Right, I've actually got a microphone in the room which is plugged into input 2. So I'm going to go back to my input, so input routing, and I'm actually going to select my Fireface mic line. In fact, I'll tell you what, I won't do that. Let's just do another one just purely for the practice of it. So remember, devices and VST connections. So on my inputs, I made demo, which is on analog 1, and I'm going to add a bus, and I'm going to call it demo 2. Again, it's a mono input, and I'm just putting one of them on there. Add bus, give it a second, demo 2 appears, and I'm going to allocate analog 2 to that one. So I could have just gone in and changed that one, but you know, whilst we're showing it, it's always good to see it a couple of times just to get the practice in. So F4 to close that window, click on to select audio test 1, the inspector information appears, and now I should be able to go down and select demo 2. Right, we need to know if we've actually got any signal. And if we look at what we've got in the track list, M means mute, and when that's lit up, you don't hear anything from the track. S means solo, which says play only tracks that have got solo selected. The little circle there is to arm the track for recording, and the little speaker is the one that we're actually after. And the monitor speaker, when you click it, it goes yellow, and you see you've got the little set of lights going up here. If I just clap my hands, and you can see that jumping, that's because the mic that's open sort of across the other side of the room, it's picking up the sound of my voice. So in fact, if I just start this at the beginning, if I arm the track, and if I record on it, I'm going to turn the metronome off. We don't need that. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit to what we can see. And you can see the waveform that's coming up. I'll just zoom that a little bit. Don't worry about the zooming, but just so that you can see it. So what that is now picking up is me talking from a mic which is sort of behind me and across the room. But you can see that we've actually got input coming in. And we can see this little band going up and down here. Now, the thing you've got to be aware of is that this is working because I've got everything set at a fairly low level. If you get too much gain on the go, what you end up with is that the microphone picks up the sound, the software records the sound, and then the speakers end up playing back the sound because you've got this monitor button lit up, and then you end up where the microphone picks up the sound again and it goes through and you end up getting a howling feedback loop. You generally don't want that. So if I just stop recording for a second, and if you press the monitor button so that it's not yellow, you'll see that the signal bit there where you could see what we're doing. So with it yellow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, you can see it jumping about as I make noise. If I turn the monitor off, you don't hear yourself back through the speakers. So you may want to play with that. If you're setting your output to headphones, you may want to actually use the monitoring so that you can hear what you're doing. But if I then press the record button again to just carry on recording, you'll see on the waveform that's being created that even though you've got no indicator here that you've got level coming in, you're still getting the sound of me recording. And if I clap my hands for a moment, you can see those peaks appearing. So you're still getting your input, but you don't get any howling feedback. So just to sort of say that again, because I know it can be confusing, if you click on the monitor button so it's yellow, you can get a visual indication and you can hear through the speakers what you're recording. If you click monitor off, you still record it and you'll see the waveform. Right, we've now got some sort of sound in here, so let's see if we can actually play it back. Now the interesting thing, if you've got monitor set on, whatever you do, you will not hear it. I'm going to turn the monitor off and I'll just sort of illustrate that in a moment. So if I start that playing, record on it, I'm going to turn the metronome off, we don't need that. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit to what we can see. And you can see the waveform that's coming up. I'll just zoom in. And there you can hear the recording of me from earlier. Now, so that you can see if I mute that, so what that is now picking, you don't hear it. From a mic, which is and if you put the we don't need that on, by the way. And if you put the monitor switch on, and we can see this, then you don't hear it. And that's the thing that I promise. If you're new to Cubase, we'll have you scratching your head that you'll record something, you'll go back to listen to it, you'll leave the monitor on, and you won't hear anything. To go, what you end up with is okay. That basically is getting sound in and out. If you don't have a setup with a microphone on it for the moment, and you just need to make some noise that you can check, what you can do is add tracks. So I just right click there, but you could go up and click at the top and add an instrument track. And I would just use Groove Agent, which comes with Cubase anyway. It's a nice little drum machine, and it just gives us something that we can click on screen to actually get a noise to check that we're getting some sort of output. So there you see, if I click on my audio test one, the inspector shows me audio test one. If I click on Groove Agent, it shows me Groove Agent. And if I click on the little edit instrument icon there, it will open my instrument for me. Doesn't really matter what it is, just as long as it loads some samples, please. Right, my ambience kit is loaded up there, so okay, and I've got, so the only point of doing this at the moment is that it lets me have a noise source that I don't have to record anything for. And just one last little thing that might be handy whilst you're going through, the indicators that you see here, this strip, so if I just do that on that tom again, are showing you what you've got on the track. If you click the little star button for the control room mixer, or if you go to, if I can remember this, devices, top bit control room mixer, this actually gives you the overall output. Yeah, that's somewhere where you can actually see that you've got some sort of output. So there you go. Just to very briefly recap then, go to devices, go to device setup, and select your audio interface. Have a quick look, but don't necessarily do anything with the various stuff that you've got down here, showing you what's in place, what's not in place, what you can see, what you can't see. Just leave that as default. You should find if you click on Control Panel that you will get the actual control panel for your for the driver set that comes with your audio interface. Again, don't worry about it, just know it's there. So we've got the correct name in place for our audio interface. Click OK on that, and then open up VST connections on F4, inputs and outputs. You can add a bus if you need to, you can change an allocation if you need to, you can change names if you need to, set up your inputs and set up your outputs. Again, you can change names, you can add things, you can remove things. Get rid of this screen, go into your track and make sure, if you're seeing something other than this bit, just click on the name at the top and set the little arrow going into a box gives you your input, the little arrow going out of a box gives you your output. and you should be pretty much good to go. Okay, hopefully that has helped you get your head around the basic concepts of getting stuff into and out of Cubase. Do us a favour, hit subscribe if you haven't, and stick any comments, any requests for anything else to be covered in the comments down below, or pop over to my Facebook music page. I'll pick them up and see what I can do to help out. Okay, this is Andy Picker. Take care. Catch you next time out.